Okay, here we are with our second video. These are actually our notes for today. Don't worry, it's not very difficult. It's not anything too new vocab terms, but still trigonometry. So make sure you have your calculator, which you should already have because you already watched that other video, and fill in the blanks with me, and then you're gonna complete the rest of this on your own. Okay? All right. So we have this topic is angles of elevation and depression. But don't worry, it's super exciting and happy. So the definition for an angle of elevation is an angle between a horizontal line and a line of sight where the angle is above the horizontal line. So what do I mean by that? Go to your diagram here. You have a little person looking up here at this hot air balloon. So the angle of elevation is the angle between this horizontal line and this line here, which is known as the line of sight. I'm going to label that here. Line of sight is that diagonal one there. And so as you can see, we have a 38-degree angle there. Sorry if you can't see that is 38 degrees. That is the angle of elevation. Now the angle of depression is an angle between another horizontal line and a line of sight where the angle is below the horizontal line. Okay, so let me use another color here. So this would be the horizontal line we are referring to now. And the angle of depression is formed by the line of sight and that line of sight there. Okay? Line of sight and the horizontal line. So that is 38 degrees as well. Oh, interesting. So, a couple things to notice. The two horizontal lines are parallel to each other, and the angle of elevation and depression are congruent, which you can see there because they're both 38. But why are they always congruent, you ask? Because I know you asked that. By alternate interior angles theorem. Alternate interior angles are always congruent. So what you should know is that the angle of elevation and the angle of depression will always be congruent. How convenient. Another important thing to note is that if you were to draw a vertical line, then a right triangle is formed. So I could draw a right triangle here. There's my right triangle. More commonly, we use this right triangle. There you go. But it doesn't matter which triangle you draw and you use because they are both congruent. Okay? All right. So now we're going to do example 1 together. It says, describe each angle as it relates to the situation shown. Ooh, excuse me. It's late. Okay. All right, so here's angle 1. By the way, if you can't tell on your paper that this is a mountain right here. You see the mountain? Like this mountain, okay? That's what that is on your paper. Sorry, it didn't show up very well. Also, down here is a little house. Okay, see the little house there? All right, so angle 1, what you're going to ask yourself, is that an elevation or a depression? Angle of elevation or depression? So you look at where it is. It is below this horizontal right here. See? So if it's below the horizontal, it is an angle of depression. More specifically, it is an angle of depression from the mountain to the person. So you need to be able to see this in a word problem and understand what the diagram looks like. So when you create your own diagram, it's accurate and correct. Angle 2, okay, let me use some different colors here. Angle 2 is formed by this horizontal and the line of sight here. So since it is above that horizontal, we call it an angle of elevation. Now we are going from the person now to the mountain. Okay. Actually, we'll do this color. The next one, angle 3, is formed by this line of sight here and this horizontal here. So it is below the horizontal, therefore it is an angle of depression. Below is depression. From, where do we start? We start at the angle, which is the person, to, and you can see it goes all the way to this house there, the bottom right. Lastly, angle 4. So that's going to be formed by this horizontal and this line of sight. As you can see, it's above the horizontal, so it's going to be an angle of elevation from the house, so starting at the house, to the person. Okay, so just make sure you understand what those terms mean. Angle of depression, angle of elevation. Your quiz next time is going to have some problems. Mostly it'll just be solving trig like you did on the homework, but you'll have at least one, if not a couple, of word problems. So let's do some word problems together so I can show you how to do them. Okay. They're the same as before with the trig, so it shouldn't be too bad if you understand basic trig, but the hardest part is setting up the picture. So as you can see, a diagram is not necessarily going to be given to you. So you have to draw the diagram and figure that out. So let me do number 1 with you, and then I'll let you guys do the rest on your own. Okay, sometimes the pictures are drawn, or maybe I'll set up the diagram, but you have to label it. So if there is no picture drawn, just know that still means you have to draw a diagram, your own diagram. Nico, will you stop? Oh my goodness.
Sorry, babe, I didn't know he was back here.
That's okay.
Go.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Anyway, so number 1. Brian's kite is flying above a field at the end of a 6 meter of string. So first thing you want to do, start with your little picture. Let's draw Brian. So we're going to draw Brian right here. There he is. He's on the ground, okay? But he is holding up this string attached to this little kite, right? So from his hand to the kite, okay? Notice how it says 65 meters of string. So there you go. The next part, if the angle of elevation to the kite measures 70 and Brian is holding the kite 1.2 meters off the ground. Okay, let's pause there before we finish that. Also, that is not grammatically correct, but oh well. If the angle of elevation of the kite measures 70 degrees, okay, so that means it's above the horizontal. Now, I don't mean this right here, because that's not exactly right. Notice how it says he's holding this kite 1.2 meters off the ground. So that means from here to here, 1.2. Like that's the height from the ground to his hand. He's holding the kite, and so the angle of elevation formed by his hand with this as the horizontal, okay, that is going to create a 90-degree angle with the angle of elevation here. Okay, so this is a little different because the triangle is like raised up from the ground a little bit, where you have this segment right here, here to here is 1.2 meters. Okay, I'll just write it as 1.2. So a lot of times it's not going to be like that where it's shifted up, but in this case it is. So let's continue. How high off of above the ground is the kite flying? So that means we are going to be solving for what we want is the entire height here. Okay, but in order to find that, we have to first calculate this segment from the kite to where that horizontal is. So we're going to label that X. Okay, so you have to be able to kind of label that, and that's the hardest part. From here, the rest should be pretty straightforward if you remember your trig. So you start by labeling your triangle. 70 is the angle of elevation, so that's going to be our reference angle. So you label opposite, that goes here. You'll label your adjacent, which is this one here. And you'll label your hypotenuse, which is this here. Then we need to think about what are we given? That's 65, the hypotenuse. And what are we trying to find? That is X, the opposite. So then we're going to have, let's write out our, some old hippie caught another hippie tripping on acid. So then we have O for opposite and H for hypotenuse. So the one that uses O and H is sine. So then we write it out. Sine of 70 degrees equals opposite X over hypotenuse 65. Okay, and then we're going to solve for X. So remember that's going to be multiplying both sides by the denominator. Multiply by 65. That goes away. And so then I have 65 times sine of 70. And handy dandy calculator out. And 65 times sine of 70 is 61.08, blah, 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 blah. But that's not my final answer, is it? Right? No, it is not. Because, sorry, I need to move this over. We want to actually find the entire height, right? From the height of the kite all the way to the ground. So remember that we were holding the kite string 1.2 meters off the ground. So that means the final height needs to be 61.08 plus that extra added height, which is 1.2. And so add 1.2 and you should get 62.28. So we can round that. Notice how it said to round to the nearest tenth. Okay, so that's going to round to 62.3 meters. Okay, and that is the height of the kite. So a little bit more work just because you got to draw a picture, but the math is the same as the trig. Okay, I'm going to actually, so you guys need to do number 2, and then before I let you work on this on your own, I'm going to help you set up number 3 because it is kind of tricky. Okay, so if you look at number 3, it's saying from the top of a vertical cliff, it's vertical, meaning this is vertical, is 40 meters high. Okay, so this is my cliff. The angle of depression of an object that is level with the base of the cliff. So here's the base of the cliff. We have an object somewhere here on the ground. So it's saying that it's level with that base. So that's where our object is. And it's saying the angle of depression, here's where it gets tricky. The angle of depression is not exactly right here. Everyone thinks, put it in red, everyone thinks it goes right here, but it does not. Okay, the angle of depression in this case, and remember in any case, it is below the horizontal. So really what it's describing is you have a horizontal, imaginary horizontal, and the angle of depression is going to be formed like that. Okay, but that's not very helpful because that's not in my triangle. So you can either redraw a triangle or Remember what we said about the angle of depression compared to the angle of elevation? They're the same. So you can label this 34. Okay, so you want to make sure you put that one there. That's your right triangle. And then it's asking how far is the object from the base of the cliff. So it's really wanting this right here. So I'm going to call that X. Okay, so you can see what we have now. You should be able to set it up. I'll let you finish that problem. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. So make sure you're solving all these. Okay, make sure you're reading the instructions. I want you to draw a diagram. I want you to label the diagram with your the numbers that are given to you, as well as your X, what you're trying to find, and then solve for whatever it's asking for. Okay, and then lastly, it's gonna say down here, number 8 is extra credit. Okay, so if you want a little extra credit, this entire page here are your notes for the quiz next time. So not only should you keep these for your notes for the quiz, I'm also going to take a classwork grade, okay? So this is a classwork grade, meaning if you don't do it, your grade's going to go down super duper a lot, okay? So you'll get 100 if you complete everything up to number 7, and then extra credit if you do number 8, which is a little bit of a more challenging problem, okay? All right, I'll post the answers, but just the answers, so you can check your work, and you got to show your work in order to get the credit for the classwork grade. So this should be done in class, okay? You're going to hold on to it, don't turn it in, and show it to me next class. Don't forget you have Pearson homework on 5-7, and we're going to have our quiz over trigonometry on Monday. Please come see me, lunch tutorials or morning tutorials, if you have any questions or need help. Okay, guys, thanks so much. I hope you did well and you were focused, and I will see you next week. Yay, math!